My wife smirked. "Real husbands don't pay for snow removal. You can handle it," I replied. "Huh?" Stood in the driveway after a 14-day work rotation, read the city violation notice, and realized she'd canceled our service. Hours later, I logged into the account I'm a pipe welder, 34M, work these 14-day rotations where I'm gone for 2 weeks then home for 1. It's brutal work but pays well, and when I get home, I just want to decompress, not deal with yard work or house maintenance bullshit. My wife Mara, 27F, and I have been married 8 months. Before we got married, I had everything set up perfect. Housekeeper twice a week, kid named Rylan who handled yard work and snow removal, regular maintenance guys for the furnace and gutters. I told Mara up front this was how I like to live. I make good money, and I'd rather pay someone else to handle the stuff I hate so I can actually enjoy my week off. She seemed cool with it at first, even said it was smart. But about 3 months after the wedding, she came to me with this proposal. What if I took over managing the household budget? You could give me the money for the housekeeper and yard services, and I'll handle making sure everything gets done. Might even save us some money. I was hesitant, but she convinced me she was organized and responsible. She works as a billing clerk at a medical clinic, so she knows how to manage accounts. Plus, I figured if it saved money, and she was willing to coordinate everything, why not? Big mistake. Everything went fine through summer and fall. House stayed clean, yard looked good, but then winter hit, and that's where this all went sideways. 2 weeks ago, I came home from my rotation to find our driveway and sidewalks buried under a foot of snow. The city had already left a violation notice on our door. Apparently it's been like this for days. I called Mara from the driveway. "Hey, what happened with Rylan? Did the snow removal service break down or something?" "Oh, I canceled that," she said casually. "It seemed like a waste of money for something you could just do yourself." I sat in my truck staring at that violation notice. I could do myself. "Mara, I just worked 14 days straight in freezing weather welding pipeline. I'm not spending my 1 week off shoveling snow." Well, my dad always handled the snow removal for our family. He said real men take care of their own property. And there it was. This wasn't about saving money. This was about some bullshit test of my masculinity that her old school father had planted in her head. "Where's the money I was giving you for Ryland's snow service?" "I put it in our household budget. We have other expenses. The deal was that money pays for services so I don't have to do this stuff. If you're not hiring anyone, then you need to handle it." She got quiet, then said something that made my blood pressure spike. "My dad said if you really cared about our home, you'd want to take care of it yourself instead of just throwing money at problems." Her father, Gideon, is one of those guys who thinks hiring any kind of help makes you less of a man. He's been giving me shit since we started dating about everything from using a housekeeping service to taking my truck to a mechanic instead of fixing it myself. In his opinion, real men do everything with their own hands. I told Mara I wasn't doing it. I pay for services specifically to avoid this. If you canceled the service, that's your problem to solve. She hung up on me. 20 minutes later, her dad called. "Colt, Mara's upset. You're being unreasonable about a little snow." "Gideon, with all due respect, this isn't your business. It is my business when my daughter's crying because her husband won't take care of their home. What kind of man are you?" I hung up on him too. But now I'm wondering if I'm being an asshole. Mara's making me feel like I'm some lazy piece of shit for not wanting to shovel snow after working 2 weeks of 12-hour days in brutal conditions. The thing is, I specifically structured my life to avoid this exact situation. I work my ass off so I can pay people to handle the stuff I don't want to do. Now I'm married to someone who apparently thinks that makes me less of a man. So am I the asshole for refusing to shovel the snow when she canceled the service without asking me first? Or is this about something bigger than snow removal? Update 1. The response to my post was overwhelming. You guys helped me realize this was about way more than just snow removal. So I decided to dig deeper into our finances to see what was really going on. After I posted, Mara and I had another fight about the snow situation. She kept insisting I was being unreasonable and that any good husband would just handle it. When I pointed out that she'd taken my money specifically earmarked for snow removal, she got defensive and said the money was going into more important household expenses. That phrase, more important household expenses, stuck with me. So yesterday, while she was at work, I logged into our bank accounts to see exactly where the money was going. What I found made me see red. 3 months ago, when Mara took over the household budget, she'd opened a new checking account called House Fund. Every month, I'd been transferring $800 to this account, $200 for housekeeping, $150 for Ryland's yard, ARC snow work, and $450 for various maintenance and home services. Except none of that money was actually going to household expenses. She'd been transferring the entire $800 every month to pay down her personal credit card debt, about $12,000 she'd racked up before we got married. Money I thought was keeping our house maintained was actually paying for her shopping habits from when she was single. I confronted her about it when she got home. "Mara, I need you to explain these bank transfers. You've been moving our household service money to pay your credit card bills." She went pale. "I was going to tell you about that." "When?" "After I injured myself shoveling snow. After the house falls apart because we're not paying for maintenance. The debt was stressing me out. I thought if I could just get it paid off quickly, then we could go back to hiring people. So you lied to me about managing household expenses, and instead just took my money to clean up your financial mess." That's when she dropped the real bombshell. "My dad said a good marriage means sharing each other's burdens. He said you should want to help me with my debt instead of wasting money on services." There it was again, her father. I started connecting dots I should have seen months ago. The push to cancel services, the guilt trips about masculinity, the sudden attitude that hiring help was wasteful. None of this was coming from Mara originally. Her father had been coaching her on how to fix our marriage. "Did your dad know you were using the service money to pay your credit cards?" She couldn't look at me. "We talked about it, yeah." "So you and your father planned this together? You took money I specifically allocated for house maintenance and used it for your debt while making me feel like shit for not wanting to do manual labor on my week off." The fight escalated quickly. Mara started crying and saying I was being cold and unsupportive. But what really got to me was when she said, "Dad thinks you're trying to buy your way out of being a real husband." That's when I called my coworker Nolan, who's been through a messy divorce. He came over and helped me stay calm while we talked through the situation. "Man, she's been playing you," he said after I explained everything. "This isn't about saving money or traditional values. She found a way to make you pay her debt while her daddy convinced her you're the problem for not wanting to do free labor." Nolan was right. This wasn't about snow or housework. This was about Mara and her father deciding they knew better than me about how to run my life and spend my money. I told Mara we needed to have a serious conversation about boundaries with her father and transparency about money. Her response? "You're just upset because Dad can see through your laziness. I'm staying at Nolan's place for a few days to clear my head. But I'm starting to realize I married someone who doesn't respect my career, my money, or my choices. And her father is actively encouraging her to see me as a problem to be fixed, rather than a partner to be respected." The snow is still sitting in our driveway, by the way. Mara's been texting me asking when I'm coming home to take care of it. Not apologizing for lying about the money, not promising to hire someone, just expecting me to give in and do the work myself. I don't know what the next step is, but I'm not going home until she understands that lying about money and conspiring with her father to manipulate me isn't how marriage works. Update 2. I've been staying at Nolan's place for the past week, trying to figure out how to handle the situation with Mara and her father's manipulation. Then yesterday, everything went to absolute shit. Mara had been texting me constantly, alternating between, "Please come home," and "You're overreacting about the money." I was actually considering going back to try working things out, maybe with some marriage counseling. Then she called me yesterday morning crying. "Colt, you need to come home right now. There's water everywhere." I drove over immediately, thinking maybe a pipe had burst from the cold. But what I found was so much worse. Our basement was flooded. Not from a random pipe burst, but because Mara had decided to save money on our quarterly gutter maintenance and tried to clean them herself. She'd knocked a section of gutter loose, and when yesterday's rain hit, water had been pouring down the side of the house and into the basement through a foundation crack that our regular maintenance guy always sealed as part of his seasonal service. But wait, it gets worse. While trying to fix the gutter situation herself, Mara had also decided to clear what she thought was a clogged downspout by ramming a broomstick up into it, except it wasn't clogged. It was just full of ice. Her ramming around had disconnected the downspout from the gutter system entirely. "Why didn't you just call the maintenance guy?" I asked, standing in ankle-deep water in our basement. "I canceled that service too," she said quietly. "Dad said you were just burning money having people do things we could do ourselves." That's when I lost it. "Mara, what other services did you cancel?" The list was staggering. In addition to the housekeeping, snow removal, and quarterly maintenance, she'd also canceled our furnace service contract, the quarterly pest control, and even our lawn care for next spring. Over $20,400 per month in services that I'd specifically set up to maintain our home and make my life manageable. All of that money had been going to her credit card debt while her father convinced her that I was just being a lazy, entitled husband. The basement flooding was going to cost us at least $5,000 to repair. Professional water extraction, new flooring, replacing damaged drywall, and dealing with potential mold issues. Way more than our deductible, and way more than it would have cost to just maintain the gutters properly. But the real kicker came when I was helping clean up the mess. The basement stairs were slick from the water, and I nearly wiped out carrying a box of damaged items. If I'd fallen and injured my back or shoulder, I'd be out of work for weeks or months. As a pipe welder, my body is my livelihood. I can't afford injuries that keep me from doing my job. That's when it hit me. Mara's cost-saving measures weren't just disrespectful and deceptive. They were actively putting my career and our financial stability at risk. I confronted her about the bigger picture while we were waiting for the water extraction crew. "This isn't about saving money, Mara. You've cost us thousands of dollars and nearly cost me my ability to work. What was your endgame here?" She broke down crying again, but this time she told me the truth. "Dad said if I could just get you used to taking care of things yourself, you'd see that you don't need to waste money on services. He said once you got into the habit of handling maintenance, we could save enough money to buy a house closer to my parents." There it was. This whole thing, the canceled services, the guilt trips about masculinity, the financial manipulation. It was all part of a plan to change my lifestyle and force me to move closer to her father. I called Nolan to come pick me up. Before I left, I told Mara we were done talking until she was ready to have a conversation without her father's input, and until she was ready to be honest about what she really wanted from our marriage. Our neighbor Tessa saw me loading my stuff into Nolan's truck. She's a single mom who's been dealing with house maintenance on her own for years. "I heard about the flooding," she said. "That's what happens when you try to DIY stuff you don't know how to do. Your wife's lucky it wasn't worse." She was right. And I was starting to realize that this pattern of canceled services and forced DIY work wasn't going to stop with snow removal or gutter maintenance. Mara and her father had a vision of the man they wanted me to become, and it had nothing to do with who I actually am or what I want from life. I'm staying with Nolan indefinitely now. Mara's been calling constantly, but I'm not going back until we can have a real conversation about boundaries, honesty, and whether she actually wants to be married to me or just wants to reform me into someone else. Final update. After the basement flooding disaster, I knew I needed to get to the bottom of what was really going on between Mara and her father, so I hired a restoration company to handle the water damage and spent the last 2 weeks investigating our finances and figuring out my next move. What I discovered was worse than I imagined. I started by going through all of Mara's bank records and phone bills. What I found was months of communication between her and her father that revealed this wasn't just about saving money or traditional gender roles. They had been planning a complete overhaul of my lifestyle. The smoking gun came in a series of text messages between them from last month. Mara had sent her father. "He's finally starting to question the services. I think the snow removal pushback is working." Gideon's response: "Good. Once he gets used to doing the yard work and maintenance himself, he'll see he doesn't need to live in that expensive neighborhood. Start looking at houses closer to us. We can help with the down payment if he's saving money by not hiring services." Another exchange from 3 weeks ago. Mara: "He still refuses to shovel, says it's not his job." Gideon: "Keep the pressure on. Tell him real men don't pay others to do what they can do themselves. Once you break him of these habits, he'll be ready to live like a proper husband." Reading those messages, everything clicked into place. This wasn't about money or masculinity. This was a coordinated campaign to manipulate me into abandoning my career-focused lifestyle and moving into their orbit where they could control more of my decisions. I had one final conversation with Mara yesterday. I met her at our house. Well, my house, since I'd been making all the mortgage payments while she diverted the service money to her personal debt. I found the text messages, I said, putting my phone on the kitchen table. You and your father have been planning to manipulate me into changing my entire lifestyle. She went white but tried to deny it at first. It's not manipulation. We just think you'd be happier. Happier living near your parents so your dad can supervise how I maintain my property. Happier doing manual labor on my 1 week off instead of resting between brutal work rotations? That's when she finally admitted the truth. Dad thinks your job makes you antisocial and materialistic. He said if I could just get you to slow down and appreciate simpler things, you'd see that you don't need to work so hard or live so expensively. Your father wants me to change careers? Maybe eventually. He knows someone who could get you a local welding job. You'd be home every night instead of gone for 2 weeks at a time. I stared at her. Mara, that job pays 1/3 of what I make now. We couldn't afford this house, couldn't afford your credit card payments, couldn't afford the lifestyle you enjoy on a local welder's salary. Dad said we could make it work if we moved closer and lived more simply. That conversation lasted 2 hours, but the conclusion was clear. Mara had never accepted who I was or what I wanted from life. She'd married a pipe welder making $180K per year, then immediately started working with her father to turn me into a local tradesman making $55K who would live under their influence. So here's what I did. I immediately restored all the canceled services, called our old maintenance company, and paid extra to get back on their schedule. Hired a new housekeeping service after confirming our regular woman was booked up. Set up new snow removal for the rest of winter and lawn care starting in spring. Total monthly cost, $2,400. Exactly what it was before Mara took over. I also separated our finances completely. Set up a new account that she doesn't have access to, and told her she's no longer managing any household budgets. She can contribute to shared expenses through a joint account, but the days of her having control over money earmarked for services are over. The ultimatum I gave Mara was simple. We can try marriage counseling if you're willing to establish clear boundaries with your father regarding our marriage and our finances. But if you can't separate his opinions from your own decisions, then we need to start talking about divorce. Her response told me everything. I can't just cut my father out of my life. He's family. I'm not asking you to cut him out. I'm asking you to stop letting him orchestrate our marriage. She couldn't promise that. Said it wasn't fair to ask her to choose between her father's guidance and her husband's preferences. So I made the choice for her. I told her she has 2 weeks to decide if she wants to be married to me as I actually am, or if she wants to keep pursuing this fantasy version of me that her father has in his head. If it's the latter, I'll file for divorce, and we can both move on. Yesterday was day 10 of those 2 weeks. Mara spent the weekend at her parents' house, presumably getting coached by Gideon on how to handle this ultimatum. She came back Sunday night and told me she thinks we should take a break so she can figure out what she really wants. That was all the answer I needed. I'm meeting with a divorce attorney tomorrow. I've been thinking a lot about what my neighbor Tessa said about the flooding. Your wife's lucky it wasn't worse. She was right, but not just about the water damage. I'm lucky this happened 8 months into marriage instead of 8 years, before we had kids. Before our finances became completely tangled. The hardest part isn't losing Mara. It's realizing I never actually had her. I had someone who saw me as a project to be improved rather than a person to be partnered with. Someone who thought my work ethic and lifestyle choices needed to be fixed rather than respected. I'm back in my own house now, with all my services restored and my finances protected. My rotation starts again next week, and for the first time in months, I'm actually looking forward to coming home afterward. The house will be clean, the yard will be maintained, and nobody will be guilt-tripping me for choosing to pay professionals instead of doing manual labor on my time off. It's not the ending I wanted when I got married, but it's the right ending for who I actually am instead of who Gideon and Mara wanted me to become. Edit. For those asking about the basement repairs, insurance covered most of it since it was water damage from a structural failure. Total out-of-pocket was about $1,200, which is still $1,200 more than proper maintenance would have cost, but manageable. Edit 2. Also, for anyone wondering, Rylan, the kid who used to do our yard work, reached out when he heard about the situation. He's got an opening in his schedule again and offered to take us back on for snow removal at the same rate. Good to know that at least someone in this situation values reliable business relationships.